Oh, the man of tomorrow is here with you again, and I know what everybody is asking. Where is Sovereign Tech this week? Well, let me tell you a little something what's going down. So this will come out before this week's Sovereign Tech actually comes out. It was pretty important that on this week's Sovereign Tech, I wanted to announce something pretty exciting. Let's just say, and I'm going to talk more about this as we go on with the show. Let's just say that the Golden Stallion's going through some through some life changes, okay, in a very, very serious way. And in that, well, something that I've been cooking and working on for a while, and that people involved with Sovereign Tech have known about for a little while, and that really there was an original idea for how this was going to work, and then there is how it's actually going to end up being. So basically, I'm going to break this down. We have questions to get into. We're going to get into them. We've got an album of the week. We got the whole thing. It is your Wednesday patron-only Q&A, baby. And actually, I should say, well, to tell you, maybe hint at what's going on, this is your Zomia ONE Underground Wednesday Q&A. Whoa, what the hell was that mouthful? Well, it doesn't really matter, what gets said in audio. What matters, I guess, is how it gets listed in, say, your podcast app. Well, hell, while we're speaking of that, there's so many directions this could go. While we're speaking of that, and all of this is going to end in the answer why Sovereign Tech hasn't come out yet. But don't worry, it's going to come out either tonight after this is released or maybe even on Thursday. Anyway, so did anyone else this morning, okay, we're talking about Wednesday, March 6th, 2019. Anyone else this morning get that new Pocket Cast update to version 7 that my Android users? Yeah, exactly. What a fucking mess that is. I mean, what a mess. There's some added features, but then there's a bunch of features and even just like data points that it used to give you that are just gone. I mean, just gone. And like a lot of the features of where you can, one of my favorite ones, which was to when you played a podcast and then it would auto delete at the end. It doesn't really do that anymore. Now it kind of archives it. It's confusing as fuck. The UX is horrible. Okay. Which of course is a direct outcropping of the new UI that Pocket Cast has. And if you're somebody that's been using Pocket Cast beta, you know better than I because you've been dealing with this for a little while. But I was not using beta because I'm in general, you could say a podcast app isn't exactly mission critical as it were. So you could feel a little more comfortable using a beta version of the app. In general, in the past 2-3 years, I've been recommending, and in my own life, if I can help it, I don't use beta. If that's all that's available, like literally it's something new that's in beta, okay, fine. Then I want to try it out and I need to use it that way. But otherwise, I don't recommend using a beta. But with a podcast app, sure, you could argue, well, what harm is there? And maybe you're right. But, when you find out like the bullshit that happened with WinRAR, what was the compression that it was the compression file type that it was using, APEC or something. Anyway, just crazy. An exploit sitting for over 20 years. So anyway, but yeah, I could understand the argument that maybe there's no harm in doing that. But anyway, if you were a beta user of Pocket Casts, you've dealt with this already and you know what it was like. Well, now everybody's getting version 7 and it's a fucking mess and I don't want to use the app anymore personally. I really don't. I'll probably talk about this in the upcoming Sovereign Tech as well. Because it's just so bad. And Pocket Cast has been the app, the really shining example, I think, of great app management, how an app can be done, how developers handle things. And I know it got bought by NPR, what was that, a year ago or so? And its web client is great. I paid for its web client. And it's a pay for app. I paid the $5 years ago. I've been using Pocket Cast for a very long time. But the writing was on the wall, as it were. And I don't know if any of these weird changes have to do with, shall we say, I don't know, orders from on high at NPR or what. But Pocket Cast is a really bit of a mess. So that said, maybe the Golden Stallion's got an alternative for you. Now, you might be somebody that's already using Dogcatcher or using something else, whatever. Okay, maybe that's what you're using. But let's bring this all together. Now, when I said Zomia ONE, in fact, specifically Zomia ONE Underground, what the hell is all of that? All right, we're going to tell you. So Zomia ONE, about a year, maybe 2 years ago, I was talking about I wanted to do a network and I was going to launch a network. I'm kind of glad based upon other things that are going on right now, and I will tell you about that, I am glad that that did not end up happening at that time. It's one of those, I often call this my last irrationality, that things seem to happen for a reason. Granted, I think there's rational ways of saying how that happens without any need for woo-woo or some kind of supernaturalism. But regardless, things seem to always work out in the end, don't they? And, or at least in my life, that's how I've found it. If I know there's people who feel like they have a perpetual black cloud around them and maybe they don't think things end up working out that way, well, that's another conversation for another time. Anyway, the way things have worked out. So, what I am launching a new network. Originally, it was going to be on Radionomy, and it was actually going to be fairly live, where it's something that was running 24/7. There was going to be music on there, the whole thing, and I was going to be using Radionomy for that. That has its disadvantages. For example, like if I played podcasts on it, you couldn't actually just download the podcast from it. The podcast would have to be hosted elsewhere. And you would, and I wanted to have other shows by other hosts, and kind of bring it all under this one banner. And I've wanted to do this for a while because Sovereign has so much reach, at least for a podcast, because we're talking anywhere. I mean, and the numbers are still going up. We're talking anywhere between, 15,000 to say 35,000 listeners per week. And so why not take those numbers and expand and say, okay, well, here's all this other great content, right? Here's all these other great shows that you might be interested in. And really with that, say, for example, we've talked about this on other patron content. Notice I'm saying patron and not Patreon. Reveal's coming. With other patron content where, okay, we're going to take the Star Wars update and we're going to go live with that. That's going to go out to the public now. It's not just going to be a patron perk. We're going to take the Star Trek update. All right. And we're going to put that out there for everyone. It's not just going to be a patron perk. In fact, both of those shows have been renamed respectively to TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast, and Sovereign Trek, a Star Trek podcast. And both of those, will be spinning out live. There are going to be other shows, some of which will be a surprise, some of which you'll hear announcements about very soon. For example, there is a metal podcast that is going to be on this network as well, which is, anyway, I won't tell you the title yet, but there's a lot of things coming out that are all going to be on this network. And it would, and I want to bring in other shows as well, again, with other hosts that want to, that operate independently, that I'm not, maybe I'd be a guest on every once in a while, but that I'm not like directly producing, and it's not directly me, creating and editing all of that content and everything. And so I've wanted to do this for a while. Now, I'm not going to be able to pull off the music part, but that's okay, because instead of using Radionomy and instead of it being something that's running 24/7 live, I am going to do it through Podbean, and there is going to be an entire network, and the network is called Zomia One. Of course, for those that don't know where Zomia comes from, you've heard it from me. That's where, like, if you go to zog.email, that's the Z stands for Zomia, and ZOG stands for Zomia Offline Games, not Zionist whatever government. But there might be a reason that I chose the acronym ZOG for Zomia Offline Games. Zomia, of course, is a part of the world. It was the centerpiece of a book, or the central subject of a book. Was that by Jason C. Scott? Or Jason Scott? Whoever. That was The Art of Not Being Governed. And it was all about this area in Southeast Asia, or in Southern Asia, that is like this hill, these highlands, this hill land, that governments in the area traditionally have not been able to really, they can't tax the people there, and they can't really govern them because it's so hard to navigate, because it's so fucking hilly. It's like, it's tough to even build roads there. Who will build the roads? Well, in Zomia, there aren't any, and they don't fucking need them either. But anyway, Zomia is this effectively this part of the world where you, after a fashion, have anarchism because nobody controls it, but there are people living there. So I've been using that term, Zomia, for a long, long time. It was, what I named my game company after. It's what I've done a lot of things after. And now it is what I've named my podcast network after. And this is Zomia One. Now, you might be thinking, Stallion, you've had a lot of plans, for stuff to come out, and some of it's come out now, some of it hasn't. Is this more of that? Okay, again, you're getting this at the beginning of patron content. You're going to be the first to know about this, even though I'm going to announce it on Sovereign Tech proper as well. But I'll let you really get the jump on it here. Okay, so you can go to zog.ninja right now. There will be other URLs for this. Okay, but you can go to zog.ninja and you can check it out. It's not everything has been uploaded yet. Okay, but I have had to, for various complex reasons, I've had to hand upload every single podcast I've ever done. Not just Sovereign Tech. Okay, there's also, which we're up to, 317 episodes of Sovereign Tech. I've had to hand upload, meaning that I wasn't able to just import the RSS feed like I originally thought I was going to, which is why I thought that this would be ready to launch at the end of February, because I was like, oh, I can just plug it all in and away it goes. I've had to upload all of the specials as well. Now, I mean, part of the reason that this happened is that after a couple of years of using SoundCloud, this would be back in 2013, 2014, SoundCloud changed their RSS feed. And so if I just imported the RSS feed for Sovereign Tech, there are about 100 episodes, actually more than that, about 150 episodes that would not get imported because of the old RSS feed, and basically SoundCloud has canceled that feed. So while you could play the sounds on SoundCloud, there was no way to really import it elsewhere. So the first 100 some odd episodes of Sovereign Tech would not be lost to time. They would be if I canceled my SoundCloud account, which eventually is going to happen. And SoundCloud has been in so much trouble in the past year that a lot of podcasters have been moving away from SoundCloud, and a lot of the major podcast platforms like Libsyn and some others have been really great about helping other podcasts. And I mean, we're talking about some major ones, import all of their stuff into Libsyn, especially if they've been around for a while. I ended up going with Podbean, which Podbean has been in business for over a decade. I mean, they're not going anywhere, and this is all they do. Okay, and they have a ton of features in it, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the feature set, and then I have some other life changes that I'm going to tell you about, and we'll get into your questions, and we'll get into our album of the week. Okay, but right now, if you go to zog.ninja, you will go to the new website. It's very basic, but Podbean offers a website for you if you have a podcast through them. Okay. And so I've decided to use that. Okay. And part of this is to really hew down costs on what it takes to, have Sovereign Tech up and running, because now we're doing a full network. Okay. And to even do a full network, SoundCloud would become very cost prohibitive to do that, as to where Podbean can basically handle my server costs. They give me completely unlimited uploads, completely unlimited, which was not true for SoundCloud. There was limitations, and there were times where Sovereign Tech alone broke those limitations, and there were issues with uploads and with people getting episodes in their RSS feeds and everything. So getting away from SoundCloud, total win. Total win. Needed to happen. Even though, I think SoundCloud will continue to be in business for the foreseeable future. So I wasn't feeling a whole ton of pressure, but while other things are going on, it made sense for this big shift to happen. And if I did it in any other time, I don't even want to know how many hundreds of episodes I'd have to deal with and hand upload. Because I've also had to upload all of the Patreon content, okay, that was originally Patreon content. And I had some inkling that at some point this would need to be. That's why I actually called, even though I ended up over the past couple of years, I would keep referencing Patreon, which is going to sound weird when all this stuff's up on Podbean. I did title things subscriber episode because I figured at some point, maybe we won't be on Patreon. So calling it a Patreon episode would propose a problem. So anyway, basically now, Podbean offers their own patron system. Okay. It's not Patreon. They offer their own patron system, and they do not run into the, shall we say, what are arguably ethical challenges that people are having with Patreon, because I have lost a lot of patrons as late, and it is, and the feedback that I'm getting is that they can't people don't want to support the Patreon as a platform anymore. So with that said, okay, here, and I had people who, and they really did the honorable thing, or I mean, it's not dishonorable if they didn't want to do this, but it was a very honorable thing where they are just giving me money straight through PayPal instead of through Patreon. Now, I'm honored by that because those people, like, I have a way where I could feed them the content, but at the same time, like, that presents its own challenges. So basically I said, all right, people still want to support the stuff. They still want the content. I got to come up with a solution. And for right now, it would not be feasible for me to set up my own server, okay, and my own NAS and everything, to do this bit of work. So, and I'll explain why that is in a minute, okay, or in a few minutes here. So what I did is I am shifting everything over to Podbean because Podbean has its own patron system, okay, where you can, it's already kind of set up. If you wanted to sign up for it now, you can. There are some issues or some things that make it's not complex. Okay. I'm going to talk about this. It's not complex, but there are some limitations that Patreon doesn't have that Podbean does. And there's a couple things. One is that like you have to set up set plans, on Podbean as to where Patreon allowed for you to set the price you want to donate to me, even though there's like reward levels within that and everything. But you could send whatever amount of money you want to me. Okay. With Podbean, you have to set up specific plans. Okay. And specific dollar amounts for those plans. So you don't have the open option of how much you want to send to me. I'm creating a few different plans available for that. But basically, most of the plans for the time being are going to get the same content. And part of the reason I'm going to have whatever amount you want to send to me, the reason it's going to have the same content is because a lot of content that in the past year, certainly, that you've expected at these higher reward levels that I've set up, some of that is spinning off into their own shows. Okay, into where like they are going to be a specific show publicly available on the network. For example, what was previously the Star Trek update, which is now Sovereign Trek. That's available. Every episode is now available for free. As they're uploading, they're still uploading. Every episode's available for free on the network, even though originally they were pay for perks on Patreon, but now they're available for free there. And I mean, there aren't a ton of episodes of it, but they're still going to continue to be once a month because it's going to be one of the real features of the network. Game Talk will also be like its own show on the network, where previously that was like a $5 perk. Okay, on Patreon. User Podcast is still going to be behind the paywall. The Wednesday Q&As are still going to be behind the paywall. Other content is, a lot of like the specials, the reviews I do, or, a lot of the little episodes that don't really have like a subheader to them. Those will still be behind the paywall. Okay. But, a lot of this other stuff is spinning out. So, to basically keep you feel like you're getting your value, that's part of why I've done that. So anyway, I've been going almost 20 minutes here, so I want to wrap this up. Patreon, I will keep Patreon running. I will keep uploading content to Patreon. I'm not going to make any real changes to Patreon for the time being. Okay. So you can stick with that. Eventually there will be a cutoff point where I'm like, okay, maybe no more Patreon. And I'm also open to your feedback on Podbean. Now you can download, here's a complaint about Patreon that I also got. A lot of people don't want to support it, but also a lot of people hate the mobile app. And I don't blame you. I agree. I've gotten complaints from a lot of patrons about that the mobile app just sucks. And it does. I mean, it really, really does. With Podbean, they have their own podcast app, and it's good. I mean, certainly better than Pocket Cast version 7. And also it allows you to very easily, right within the app, you can become a subscriber. You can download all of those episodes. Now I don't need to double post, Sovereign Tech every week, Sovereign Tech Prime. That way it's in like some kind of custom feed. It's all under one roof. Okay. So you're getting all the patron content, and Podbean does call them patrons. Okay. So there's no change in vernacular there, which is nice. But there won't be, so you can become a patron, you can sign up, you can do that. Like it's set up right now where you can do that right away, and you can install the Podbean app. And here's the rub though. Okay. Now, while the Podbean app is far superior to the Patreon app, okay, with the Podbean app, Patreon gave you a custom RSS feed that you could put into any podcast app. I don't think you're going to be able to pull that off because there's no separate feed for the patron content, for the paywall content. There's no separate feed for that on Podbean, with Podbean, when you sign up with Podbean. Okay. So with that in mind, you're going to have to use the Podbean app you can use either the Podbean app or you can use the website, and you can do it through the website. So you don't need a web player. You can do it right through, if you just go to zog.ninja, you can do it right there. And like I said, there's going to be other URLs. The official URL is zomia.podbean.com. Okay. But the easiest thing to do is to basically just use Podbean as your main podcast app. And of course, it's available for iOS and Android. Has a very nice dark mode, which is great. There are some other aspects to Podbean. I mean, it is something where I think they put there's a lot of features that Podbean is offering. I'm not going to break them all down right now, but that I will be taking advantage of in the immediate future. But I'm not really going to get into that. This is also going to allow for greater outreach to advertisers because Podbean has a relationship with advertisers already that can work with podcasts. So that's going to help Sovereign Tech. This is just a huge win for Sovereign Tech because it's going to, again, with a lot of these shows spinning off, that not everybody comes to Sovereign Tech for. Some people don't care when I talk about video games. They don't care when I talk about Star Wars. They don't care when I talk about Star Trek or pop culture or whatever, or they don't care about the erotica or something. They just want to be there for the tech with the anarchist perspective. So this will allow Sovereign Tech to stay somewhat of a little more of a pure product. But then if you're a listener that wants all that other stuff, you've got it all in the same feed. Okay. And that also will bring people in that maybe are just interested in Star Trek or Star Wars, because I think that Rob and I, who do TIE Fighter Renegades, okay, who do what used to be the Star Wars update, I think we have, if not the hottest, certainly one of the hottest Star Trek podcast or Star Wars podcasts out there. And so if we can bring in some Star Wars fans and then maybe they listen to Sovereign Tech or they listen to something else in there and they get that anarchist flavor, hey, that's a win for everybody, in my opinion. Okay, so I think that this is a very exciting development that's just going to grow the overall audience. It's going to create a greater Zomia community. And by the way, with the Podbean app, you can, one of the beautiful things, or one of the things that was really handy, I should say, with Patreon was that it had a kind of a social media interactivity aspect to it. Okay, we had the community tab and all this. You can comment on episodes within the Podbean app itself. So you can there's still communication that can basically happen with this, okay, with Zomia One. So when you switch over to that feed. So I'm very excited about that, and it can be more open communication that's available. Anyway, I mean, this is really very new ground for me, okay? It's going to be interesting to see how this all works out, but overall, I think it's going to be a boon. First off, it gets rid of the dangers surrounding SoundCloud and some of the limitations that came with SoundCloud. There are no limitations with Podbean. In fact, actually, I can even do video podcasts if I wanted to, and you could watch them right within the Podbean app. But that's something for the future. That's not right now. It's getting the network rolled out. Okay. But there's that. Then also it gets rid of, if you are having ethical concerns around Patreon, then you don't have to deal with Patreon anymore. You can go to Podbean. And as far as I know, and I've looked into it, Podbean is not banning, whatever asshat out there that ends up getting banned. So, you can feel better, okay, about getting that exclusive content again. And this makes it fair for those who are still supporting me on PayPal, even though they're not getting the Patreon content or the patron only content anymore. So it's a win-win for everybody, in my opinion. And it finally allows Sovereign Tech to really get to that, or not finally. I mean, it's always going to the next level, but it's another aspect another thing that allows Sovereign Tech to get to that next level where now it's a giant network. Okay. And also it's a network that doesn't just have to, I mean, I know a lot of people who the only tech show they ever listen to is Sovereign Tech because it's not all tech, right? and maybe they just want to hear whatever the fuck I'm musing about. Well, now you're going to have a bunch of shows to choose from. There's going to be Sovereign Tech. It's going to allow Sovereign Tech, I think, to be, again, a more honed down product, lean and mean, right? I mean, we've already, busted it down to an hour to where it's a little more specific and trying to be a little more truncated in what it can say. Not in a bad way, but, just where it's getting to the point. But keep in mind, if you are worried that, well, when is this going to happen? Oh, it's another one of these projects that, might take years. No, you can go there right now. Like I said, you can go to zog.ninja right now. You can download the Podbean app right now. You can do all of that right now. You can even sign up right now if you want to. Okay. I do ask if you are leaving Patreon right now, okay, because of this, and you're going over to Podbean, where this episode will eventually be available. If you are doing that, just in the exit survey away from Patreon, let me know that you switched over to Podbean. I would just like to see who's, or at least have an idea, some kind of metric that's what's happening. Some people recently have taken great advantage of the exit surveys, given me a lot of feedback, and I really appreciate that. And that's part of my decision to do this. I've been working on this for a while. And like a lot of the more specific stuff I've been working on for at least the past, couple months, or at least since the beginning of 2019, maybe even late 2018. Okay, but Zomia ONE, that is the network. That is going to be the thing. And when you become, instead of being a Sovereign Tech, dilettante in the Triple Black Arts or, whatever else, or a Sovereign Tech patron on Patreon, now you're going to be a patron of the Zomia ONE you're going to be part of the Zomia ONE Underground. That's what I'm calling it. And there'll be ads for all this replacements for all of this in Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, just to get everybody ready. Like I said, I'm not going to shut down SoundCloud yet. That's going to happen though, okay, because I'm not going to pay for both services. And also my websites will be shutting down because I'm just going to have everything going through Podbean right now. In the future, will there be something, more? Yeah, maybe. Okay. But let's get this stuff, really, let's get this down and, looking really, really solid and really slick. And then we can move on, from there. And yes, eventually Patreon, I'll eventually close my Patreon account. Okay. As long as there's subscribers, I'll probably keep it running and I'll keep it going for a good while. But eventually I will put out the call to say, look, I'm not going to post on Patreon anymore. Please move over to Podbean and become a patron there. So, but don't worry, this already exists. This is already happening. Everything's already getting transferred. There's still some episodes that have to get uploaded there to be totally up to date. But you'll see where now, when you look at the feed, you're going to see where, and especially once you become a member of the Zomia ONE Underground, you will see, you'll get everything in your feed. Okay, like you'll notice all the classic patron content that has come out over the years. If you're not in the Zomia ONE Underground yet, you'll see how, suddenly there's these other shows that are available. There's, Sovereign Trek, there's TIE Fighter Renegades, there'll be Game Talk and so on. Again, User Podcast is going to stay behind the paywall though. But that's a very unique animal, and a unique value prop and something that takes a lot of time, which if you're wondering, where's February's episode of User Podcast, don't worry, you're going to be getting 2 in March. Which was kind of one of my ideas anyway, but I'll make up for that. Don't you worry about that one. I will give you one bit of warning, and that is that if you, with the Podbean app specifically, okay, because now the Podbean app is really great in that it'll give you notifications. I know other podcast apps can do this, but anyway, it'll give you notifications as to when a new episode comes up. If you do this the instant that this Q&A is released, if you go and sign up, you're going to get a lot of notifications because I'm still uploading a ton of episodes, okay, to Podbean as we speak. So I want you to make sure that as soon as you install the Podbean app, turn off Podbean by default auto downloads episodes of podcasts that you follow. You're going to want to turn that off in settings. Okay, turn off the auto download because I will fill your phone so fast. I mean, I am literally uploading hundreds of episodes. It has taken a lot of time. But it's in the end, it's going to be worth it. Again, it's allowed me to actually clean up a lot of stuff from Sovereign Tech's past, as in where maybe, I don't know, like a URL was kind of funny or something wrong happened with the episode, whatever. It allowed me to clean up a lot of that. So this is going to be a very, very, very nice, very solid and tight product, out there with the Zomia One network. And again, there's going to be other shows. And if you are actually a podcaster and you're listening to this, and I know I have other podcasters in my that are patrons, get in touch with me if you want it to be on Zomia One network or on Zomia One. I am not guaranteeing that I'm going to put everybody's content on there. Okay. But, if I listen back and if you're consistent, okay, I will certainly, if you've been consistent over some time, I will certainly consider it. And I would love to have other podcasts and podcasters on Zomia One. And we'll figure out how to really make that work. If we decide to go forward with that. So just putting that, you guys, gals and Z's get to find out about all of this ahead of time. Okay. So if you're feeling bad about Patreon, you're feeling the squeeze, you don't have to be on Patreon anymore. You can just go to zog.ninja. Okay. Or you can look for Zomia One on Podbean and it will come up. Okay. And this is my network. And I'm really excited for this. I'm excited for all the shows that are going to be available. I'm excited for all the shows coming in the future. In fact, I'm getting interviews with some pretty interesting people, let's put it that way, that are going to be part of network-specific shows where I think it's really going to help the audience grow and hopefully get some people on board with the ideas that Sovereign Tech has been espousing for, Sovereign Tech's been going for almost a decade now. We're getting there. So this is just nothing but exciting. And I have to tell you, I have to give a thank you to all the patrons out there because you have really helped support this show and kept it going and, kept pushing to where I could even create the content that would allow for a network to even be a thing. Okay. So anyway, there's broader conversations that could be had around that, but just thank you so much. And again, if you want to stick on Patreon for right now, because it's easier, don't worry, you're not going to lose out on any content. But if you want to shift over to Podbean now, over the next day or two, all of the content will be uploaded on there and everything will be all set. The website's a little basic right now. I'll be tightening that up as well. But just so you have the confidence, I don't want to waste time. I want people getting on board with this. It is a project. It exists. It's out there and it's very, very real. And that's where this episode included will show up on there. So anyway, there you go. Check out, again, zog.ninja can take you right to it, or you can just go in the Podbean app and you can look up Zomia One and you will, you'll find it there. Anyway, okay, now that I've wasted 30 minutes talking about all that, I do want to get into your questions. I'll only have time for one, but there's something else I want to talk about. And part of the reason why I'm going through Podbean, not like setting up my own NAS or anything right now, is, and I've been debating on how to say this, on how to reveal this news. And boy, tough. This is hard to talk about. And it's really only up until recently that I've felt, terribly capable, that feel like I've had the resources to really talk about it. Well, you just ripped the Band-Aid off, right? I mean, this is getting into my personal life, but, part of what I think makes Sovereign Tech so appealing, and certainly has over the years, is the fact that I have not been afraid to share my personal life. And so I am going to share some of it with you now. And maybe I know some of you are kind of aware of this, and maybe you've heard other content somehow where maybe it was revealed or something along those lines, but here we go. So the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I, we have broke up. We have, separated. And it's actually been for a good couple months now, a little longer, actually, 3 some odd, who keeps track of this kind of time. But for some months, we have been broken up. And we are still dearest of friends. It was completely amicable. I'm not going to go into the details of why and whatever, but it was completely amicable. It was something that we decided mutually was best for both of us to, both, I guess, seek our fortunes either in whatever fashion. I don't know what words to use there. I've been trying to think about how am I going to break this to people, because Stephanie is, and I don't see it stopping, is such a major part of Sovereign Tech's history. There'd be no Sovereign Tech without Stephanie Murphy. Okay. That's a fact of life. As much as the patrons have done, so I can't even begin to tell you everything that Stephanie has done for me. And certainly, again, with this show alone, I mean, when, I first heard her before there was a Sovereign Tech, before I was in New Hampshire, when I heard her doing pork therapy, was that 8 years ago? 8-9 years ago. That totally inspired me to get behind the mic and get my opinions out there. And it was an honor back then to where it got to the point where Stephanie was like, "Oh, Brian, yeah, come on, you come on Pork Therapy and do it." And so I got to really get my feet wet, maybe ankle deep in Pork Therapy. And I was totally honored by that. And the relationship that Stephanie and I had was just such a beautiful thing. And the friendship we're going to continue to have will continue to be such a beautiful thing. You can't spend that much time with somebody and then just suddenly be like, well, nah, right? Again, this was a totally amicable thing. It was something that we both agreed upon. And that's what's going on for me. So there is a life change there. I am no longer living with Stephanie, so I no longer use, even though she very kindly offered for me to continue to use it, but I no longer use the BDSM studio. So if you're wondering about some of the audio quality differences and things like that, I'm in moments of transition, as the old saying goes, right now. And so that's what's behind that. That's also the reason that I'm not setting up a NAS to feed all this content to you. And I decided to go with Podbean because, things change, you try new things evolve, and this is really an evolution. And that's where, the idea of the network, that's an evolution of things. I am not slowing down. If anything, I am speeding the fuck up. Okay. Don't misunderstand me. This is, I'm sure people are going to reach out to me saying, wow, Brian, really sorry to hear that, etc. It's been an honor to make all that content. And again, I don't really see it stopping. It's been an honor to make all that content with Stephanie over the years. It was a lot of fun. When I listened back to the best of episode that we did last week, you couldn't help but hear the magic over the years, when we were on the radio together and everything. And it was, it's just a ton of fun. So I don't look back on it, with any kind of animosity whatsoever, quite the opposite. And I learned so much from that relationship. And it's all stuff that, again, the Golden Stallion is just going to keep growing. There's nothing that this is not going to stop. This is not going to slow down. Again, it's just speeding up. There's just going to be more. All right. There's just going to be more Sovereign Tech. Now there's an entire network, which we could have called the Sovereign Tech Network, but I think that would have, dissuaded people with the word tech in it. And they would think that, well, okay, this is for tech junkies. When no, I want it to be for so much more, as well as the tech junkies if they want it. So very exciting, for me to do that. And honestly, at the end of the day, I am excited for what life is bringing before me now. But it is a major life change for me, a major life shift. That was a relationship that went for years and years and years. I mean, we're talking 6-7 years, as long as there's been Sovereign Tech, but anyway, I just want to let people know what's going on. I know I don't have to tell you, but just so you're aware. And if you're wondering if there's any, some of the content has been late as late, part of that is because, well, just dealing with this transition hasn't afforded me, a whole ton of normalcy at the moment. And it's okay. If anyone's I'm fine. If before anybody gets worried or something, I'm fine. But it's been, and I know that some of the patrons that are aware, they've been incredibly helpful in a multitude of ways, and I'm so honored by that. But yeah, so that relationship has turned into a wonderful friendship. And, again, it's providing opportunities for both of us in all kinds of ways. And like I said, it was totally amicable. We're still best friends. None of that is, if anyone's worried, oh, was there some kind of, I don't know, something ugly about it? No, not at all. Not at all. So, anyway, there's, if you felt like there's been something going on, there's that. Certainly it's been, emotional of course, when you make such a major transition, there can be challenges and some sadness and things like this. And to say that there wasn't, sure there was, But just know that the Golden Stallion is okay, and getting through this, and really just growing even more. And Stephanie is happy and fine. I don't want to speak for her, but I we communicate, so I'm aware that she is very happy and all this. So there you have it. As far as what does this mean for Sex and Science Hour? Well, that's something that's well been out of, that's not really been in my hands for a long time anyway. So I can't say, what that means. I am totally open to, honestly, if Stephanie wants to do Sex and Science Hour again in the future, she's more than welcome to do it with another host. Or, who knows? Maybe who knows what the future is going to hold as far as all that goes. But just so you know what's happening, there you go. I don't know if I'm exactly going to talk about this on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, at least not right now. But yeah, anyway, there you've got it. So, yeah. And of course, my total thanks, of course, she hears it from me every day, but, my total thanks to Stephanie for everything that she did for Sovereign Tech, and of course, everything that she did for me and continues to do. So, all right. So there's that. Why don't we let's get into a question, for this week. In fact, it's a pretty appertaining question, because it's something that, I've had to think about a bit lately since, because of this transition, that I'm going through. And that is, well, here, I'll read it. I did get a question about USB 4, but maybe I'll save that for next week. Here we go. Here's the question from a patron. How in the actual fuck, first off, I love the way you talk. How in the actual fuck do I secure my data when there are strangers in my house? I can't really put my server and computers away where no one has physical access. I've disabled the USB ports on the server case, but there will be access to the switches and whatnot. I'm probably overthinking it, but you never know. So this is someone who I think I can safely anonymously say they're moving. And so, people will be going into their house, and people, you could be going through this where maybe you have an open house or something like that. And you have people looking at your house, but you're still living there, right? This is one of the challenges of doing an open house. I've been there before. I know how that goes. And in so doing, you're going to have people potentially walking by your servers or whatever, and who knows what, you never know what could happen, right? And you always want to err on the side of security and caution, especially when it comes to your digital stuff. If you're somebody that has like a home server or a NAS and all these other things, well, step one, you did very right. Like disabling USB ports, in the BIOS and everything, or however you went about that, dynamite idea. Like, absolutely, that is the first thing to do. I still think, I'll tell you, there's not a lot of great answers for this, and I'll explain why, okay, for this question. And that is, I would get what do you call it? The tape that, like, tamper sealed tape or tamper proof tape. It's not tamper proof. The thing is, somebody like tried pulling it off or whatever. Now, granted, with a lot of tamper sealed tape, there is ways around that, like where you can break out a heat gun or a blow dryer, and you could pull off the tape, and that way you won't see like the void lettering after the fact. So that can be a problem. But here's the thing: during an open house, like if somebody's breaking out that adds a lot of complexity. Breaking out a blow dryer or whatever else to get at your server. The idea is you just want to make it as hard as possible, because you can't really put a server in a safe, because you're going to need to have power to it somehow, right? So you can't really lock it away. And even if you had an attic, which would be about the best place to put a lot of that kind of equipment. If you had like an attic, people would probably want to see, what's the attic look like? That's one of the first things. If a house has an attic, okay, it's one of the first things that, I would want to look at. And so, because sometimes that can make for some very cool ideas. Some attics turn into podcast studios, frankly. So, people are going to want to look into this. But you can't put it in a safe, because again, you got to run power to it. And yeah, there's a lot of challenges that really come with that. But if you have a server and say it's to access files remotely while you're away from home, while people are looking, at the open house or something like that, you can't turn it off either and lock it away. You want access to this stuff. So I think a lot of tamper-proof tape is a great thing, to have, as far as that goes. Most cases, yeah, I mean, switches become an issue where shit can get turned off or even just unplugged. I mean, there's not a lot of good answers for that stuff. I mean, there really isn't. You want to try and make it as unattractive as possible to someone. I mean, maybe they come walking in with their kids and their kids start fucking with it and everything. And, that really does happen. And that's a very real concern. So you want to watch out for that as well. You basically just want to make it very unappealing. I mean, something as simple, but then also you want your house to look appealing. So you can't just junk up where your server is or something like that. That doesn't really work. This points to an idea. This isn't really going to help you in this sense. It points at a couple things. I guess the idea I'll tell you in a second. The other thing it points at is that this is the importance of having your shit really encrypted at a local level to where people, even if they did access your machine right there, they wouldn't be able to see anything, even if they guessed your password or, whatever the fuck happened there. Having all your stuff encrypted, using Veracrypt or depending upon what operating system you're using, etc. This really points at why that's a great thing. Granted, that runs into kind of its own challenges when you are trying to remotely access this data, but you get my point, okay, is that it really points at the importance of that and getting used to locking your computer and all this stuff, when these kinds of things happen. But again, when we're talking about a server, it's a little bit of a different situation. Now, the idea that needs to be a thing, okay, and these kind of businesses do exist, especially in California and in other parts of the world. I know in Berlin, there's some of these that I've seen them. But really, I think a very lucrative business idea, but you're thinking long term. If there was a remote place where, basically a server farm that, could be run with your own equipment, your own kit, your own server, or your own NAS or something, but it's just a little outhouse somewhere that people could rent, the electricity from and the internet connectivity from and everything. And you could pay for a really high-end, internet connection, that would do really well. And it was just this hub where, almost I know hacker spaces will allow their members to sometimes do this, where you could plug in your own server there or your NAS there and everything, and it could be run remotely. Really, that's what you need, is some kind of community setup. Okay, and you could say, well, isn't that a server farm? Well, yeah, but this is one where it's your equipment, what you're trusting, and it's all kind of done on a pool where everybody kind of pays in to get a really great internet connection and pay for the electricity and everything. I really wish that sort of thing would exist. And it's something I actually theorized. And it's a business opportunity. It's not one I can take on right now, obviously. But it would have been interesting, because then I could have just, instead of going to Podbean and coming up with some kind of payment solution, I could have just run a NAS at this independent place. Okay, now, Steve Gibson does this, right? He has level 3, where I think he can actually go and look at his server and whatever else. It's an independent building. So I know that in certain abstracts, these sorts of things already exist. And again, it is kind of a server farm, but where it's more indie, and is cost effective, I would gladly pay for renting space at something like that. And again, where it can be my own equipment, though, my own software, where it's not using, there's DigitalOcean, right, where you can pay for, not docs, droplets, right? I think that's what they call them. Or you can pay for AWS, and, run VMs in AWS and all this stuff. I know there's ways to do that, but where it's something a little more localized and maybe more activism focused, granted, that creates a hotspot for, say, alphabet soup organizations to run to. But I think that could be that sort of thing needs to exist, those kind of places. And that's why maybe it'll never be something that's on its own, but it should be attached to a hackerspace or something like that. In a way, that's really what RiseUp already has, So I'm not really describing anything revolutionary here, but it would be nice if that sort of thing really existed. If there's just this communal place where you could plug in an NAS and walk away, and it's not attached to your house, etc. That comes with its own challenges. It's a very large conversation to have around that. But that's really the only, if a place like that existed, I would say rent a place like that. Like that's like the best thing that you could kind of do. And you could say, well, but then, it's there. People could go in there and shut it off and everything. Well, I mean, you can, if it's something that's communally being run, I think there is almost like a communal protection that comes along with that. And it would be a business where, if they did not, if the situation happened where people were turning off your server and whatnot, and obviously you'd lock the building and everything. But if that was something that was going on, well, you'd stop paying for the service. So they would want to set up something where an eye could be kept on it, and you'd know what went down. Okay. Or maybe they'd set up, I don't know, security cameras or something within it where you could have an idea of what's going on and members would have access to it. Again, I'm not laying out anything revolutionary here. I'm not thinking that, I just came up with this brilliant idea. Not really. Okay. Because in some form or fashion, it already exists and it's already been done for a long time. But something that's more activism focused and a little more privacy focused, I think would be and a little more individual focused. As to compared to enterprise or startups or something like that, I think that would be fantastic. I think that would be a brilliant thing to have somewhere. So that's really the only great solution to have. Otherwise, you can't really secure the stuff. Tape off your ports, do that. At the very least, maybe put a do not touch thing over the power button, and whatever else. But there's not really a great answer for that. And if you can encrypt your shit, do so. That's there. But you run into the problem of, you got to have that thing plugged in at some point. You can't have it just connected to an UPS either inside of a safe. Like that's not going to last for long. So these are the real challenges. It also makes a great argument for making like custom cases that look like furniture, right? Granted, people are going to see the power cord going into it, but if you make like custom server cases or desktop cases or whatever that look like just part of what's around there, that mitigates some of these concerns as well. So I don't really have a great answer for you other than to absolutely tape off your ports. And maybe just put up a couple signs just saying, please don't touch, etc. And you just kind of hope that people don't. Turn off everything you can in software. As far as like the port functionality in the first place, make sure that, great passwords on your router, all that good stuff. You definitely want to be doing that. Close off any unnecessary ports perhaps on your router, make sure like a lot of like UPnP and a lot of other things are turned off. Do all of that. Okay. Like just really, really lock it down. I guess I could have spent more time talking about that, like what to lock down as far as software wise, with your router and with your devices themselves. So, but like, really locking stuff down like that, there's great tutorials that would be far better than what I could tell you online anyway. I could tell you the same thing, but it'd be easier for you to look at it and type in the commands and everything based off of the website. So, all right. I hope that kind of answered that question. Yeah, like your best option is that tamper-proof tape, and just making it like just kind of putting it off in a corner and maybe saying do not touch like that. That's really one of the best things I think you can do. If any patron has any other idea that they recommend or they went through this and they had some really clever solution, believe me, I'd love to hear it. And I'll give you all the credit in the world for it. Because I'd like to know, I'd like to know for myself as well if there are any, like just something I hadn't thought of, Okay, so let's get into our album of the week and then we can wrap up this Q&A. And like I said, the Sovereign Tech Prime episode will be out shortly after. The album of the week is one that I have been touting that it was going to be coming out for a few weeks now. And that is Queensryche's latest album, and it's titled The Verdict. And this came out on March 1st, I think. March 1st, 2019. I heard it a couple days previous to its release. And first off, let me say, 2019 is still going to be a hell of a year for a lot of releases. End of this month, we got a new Battle Beast album. I can't believe that. We're actually getting a Battle Beast and a Beast in Black album in the same fucking year within like a month of each other. This is crazy. But anyway, I could talk about that more another time. But Queensryche's The Verdict. So yeah, a lot of great albums coming out this year. So, album of the week is not going to have a hard time with me picking one. But this is one that I would pick. I have to say, so granted, this is not, Jeff Tate is not with Queensryche anymore. He has his own band, Operation Mindcrime. This is led by Todd LaTorre, who apparently also played drums on it. Todd LaTorre is if I were to use a colloquialism, he is a godsend to Queensryche because this guy is young. He fucking sounds like Jeff Tate, like really sounds like Jeff Tate, and he just has a ton of passion. I have to admit that the album itself feels a little lacking in that passion, especially compared to the previous two outings. This is the third album with Todd La Torre, and I'll admit I was expecting some serious greatness. That's not to say it's bad. It's not bad. There are some genuinely great songs on there, but it is not like the Queensryche self-title from a few years ago, which was the first album they brought in Todd La Torre on, and Condition Human, which was an awesome album. I mean, an awesome, awesome album. That was a track-for-track album. Condition Human was really, really solid. The Verdict does not live up to those previous two outings. Okay, there's a song on there, I think it's like track 4, called Light Years. That is a great song. And the other songs are pretty good too. And not that Queensryche has to keep a specific sound, and they don't. I've never minded Queensryche's experimentation. Okay, there's been sometimes where it's been a little too weird for me, but in general, I've never had an issue with Queensryche experimenting. You know, you go from Empire, which is probably their biggest album to date, you know, or something like Operation Mindcrime. You go from Empire, then you go into Promised Land, which was a tonal shift. I didn't mind that at all. You go into Here in the Now Frontier, a dramatic tonal shift. I still really like that album. Then you go into Q2K, right, in 1999, and then they got in they got Kelly Gray in to do guitarists instead of Chris DeGarmo. I very much liked Q2K. In fact, I think it's a solid album. It's kind of grungy, but it's a solid album. In fact, if any album sounds anything like The Verdict, it's Q2K. So if you like Q2K, you're probably going to like The Verdict a lot more. I don't mind that they shift tone, that they shift like style. I don't mind that they experiment. But in their experimentation, it's just not as solid an album as the previous two albums, which were really taking advantage, in my opinion, of Todd La Torre's passion. It's just not there. Okay. It's good. I almost want to call it great, but it's not at the greatness level, like I said, that those previous two albums were at. Light Years is easily, they should have released that song first. But maybe they know that the rest of the album maybe doesn't hit those highs. But Light Years is definitely the best song on there. It's a worthwhile song. It kind of reminds me where, what was the name of that album? There's the album that came out, was it like 2004? I think it was like in 2004, Tribe was the name of the album. And it had the lead song, Open Your Eyes, which actually had Chris DeGarmo back on guitar duties, at least for the album, if not on tour. And Open Your Eyes was like a really solid classic Queensryche song. I feel like with Light Years, that's exactly what we're getting. But just like with Tribe, where the rest of the album was good, but it wasn't like as good as Open Your Eyes. Or Open. I think the song was actually just called Open. It feels like that with The Verdict. So I can listen to it over and over again, and I like it the more I listen to it. But it just didn't hit me out of the gate like Condition Human did. Because Condition Human was a badass fucking album. I mean, instantly you just wanted to go into the gym and just start rocking it out. As far as, honestly, so last week's album of the week was Dream Theater's new album, which was Distance Over Time. Comparing Distance Over Time with The Verdict, I think Distance Over Time is a much better album than The Verdict. Even though Light Years is a better song than anything off of Distance Over Time. Granted, you could say it's apples and oranges, but I've always felt that Dream Theater and Queensryche were kind of sister bands in a very real way. So anyway, that's The Verdict, you can check it out. There's other good songs on there. It's a different style than what they did with their Queensryche self-title and that they did with Condition Human. But it's very, very much worth your listen, worth owning, worth getting your hands on. There's a 2-disc version that has a few extra live tracks on the second the second disc. And those are good. I mean, like it's worthwhile. I don't know if I'd spend crazy money to get the 2-disc version. There's not really like bonus tracks necessarily, which sometimes those bonus tracks are the best songs for an album's release, but like usually only Japan will get them or something, or the torrenters, of course. But that's not really the case with this one. So anyway, whatever version you get of it is going to do you fine. Like I said, Light Years is really the standout track, and it kind of stands alone though. That's really the problem here. So it's a good album. Check out the whole thing, but I wish they opened up with that one. And anyway, it's worthwhile for that alone. And Todd La Torre's passion still kind of hits. And there's good songs. it's a tonal shift from Condition Human, and it doesn't have the same energy. But gotta admit, these guys are getting a bit older. Maybe I need, it's been a long time since I've seen Queensryche on tour. Maybe I need to change that. We'll see, because I'm sure they're touring this album. But anyway, okay, that's it for your Wednesday, your Zomia ONE Underground Wednesday Q&A. I know that's a lot to say, so I'll probably just say your Underground Q&A. That's it for your Underground Wednesday Q&A. We'll wrap this up. Lots of content to come out. And again, if you want to go check it out, go to zog.ninja. If you want to check out on Podbean, get your hookup there. And that will wrap this up. I will see all of you, on the other side.